so good. Thank you, baby, for turning it on.
Did you say something?
I did. I said the heat feels good.
What'd you say?
I'm telling you, the heat. It's nice.
I can't hear you.
Just forget about it. Snuggle up, everybody.
It's The Riveted with Chris and Gina. Good morning, honey.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I'm nice and toasty warm in the trailer.
It is warm in here today.
Yes.
Cold outside, though.
Wonderful day for a podcast. And today, listener, we have got a very influential guest, very nice gentleman.
Yes,
and
I even put on a dress and did my hair and makeup today.
I see that. That's very good. Well, it's important. We are so proud so far of our young podcast being able to attract very unique, interesting folks, and this gentleman is no exception. And I thought long and hard about giving him a proper introduction, and his credentials of his life's work, I just couldn't attempt to give a good introduction with. So I'm going to allow him to do that as we talk.
I think that's a great idea.
Yes. Listener, you're in for a wonderful episode, wonderful treat. His name is Dave Titley. He is the founder and creator of the RVWeather.com website, and he's a wonderful Airstream enthusiast and owner, and we're so excited to have him on the podcast. So, Dave, welcome to The Riveted with Chris and Gina.
Welcome, Dave.
Yeah, Chris and Gina, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here this morning.
Yes, we're excited to have you here.
Yeah, can you just go ahead and set a standard, I guess, for our listener to understand who we have the privilege of talking with today, not only in your Airstream life, but just your past work life and what's led you to where you are right now with RVWeather.com.
Sure, thanks. So if my mom was still around, she'd tell you that I actually hatched as a meteorologist. I'm not sure that's quite true, but I know since about kindergarten or first grade at least that I knew back then that's what I was going to do. I was going to do something with weather.
That's
of course,
great.
When you're 6 years old, you have no idea what that means, but that's what I was going to do. Grew up in the Northeast, and back then Penn State was about the closest place for meteorology. So I applied there, got into Penn State, and I was out of state. And basically the directive from my family was, well, you got here, now you figure out how to pay for it. So I looked around, and there was this program called Reserve Officer Training Corps, which ROTC, and of course that's for commissioning officers into our armed forces. Well, the Air Force and the Navy both had weather programs. The Air Force said no, and the Navy said yes. So I said, well, I guess I'm going to be in the Navy. And that, at the time, I thought, I would do my obligation, which was 4 years, say thank you very much, and move on. But it turns out a funny thing happened on the way to that plan. Turns out I liked going to sea. I like working with sailors. I like the mission. So 4 years turned into 32 years, and through what I can only describe as a series of increasingly egregious personnel errors on the Navy's part, I ended up as a 2-star admiral.
Wow.
And as the oceanographer and navigator of the Navy. So I was responsible for really the US Navy global weather and ocean observation and prediction capabilities, amongst other things.
Wow.
Well, I have to say something really quick. Let me interject here 1 second, Dave. So I want to just say something to our listeners out there. Now, do you understand why Chris could not introduce Dave today? We would have been here till tomorrow for you trying to figure out all that.
Had I attempted to do that, it would have been an epic fail.
Yes, but Dave, what a career, what a life. This is amazing.
Unbelievable.
So one of the things that, I had to do a lot, whether it was at sea or on shore supporting the fleet, is, keeping ships and bad weather apart from each other, and you can't move the typhoon, so you have to move the aircraft carrier. And, sometimes it was pretty easy, and other times for really good operational reasons, they didn't want to move. And at some point, we kind of see this with RVing too, right? It's like, well, if you don't make the decision, then the weather's going to make the decision for you. And I saw that more than a couple times in my career. But anyways, after 2012, I retired from the Navy. I worked for a little while at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, and I was their chief operating officer. So, amongst other people, the head of the U.S. Weather Service was one of my direct reports. Penn State, my alma mater, my undergraduate alma mater, then frankly made me an offer I couldn't refuse. So I ended up coming back up to State College, or Happy Valley, go Lions, all that sort of thing. And I taught weather and climate risk and climate policy and national security for about 6 years. But during that time, and this really gets into the how we got to the Airstream, is my wife and I love going out to some of the big national parks out west, and specifically Grand Teton National Park.
Oh, we love it.
We love it.
Many of your listeners, I'm sure, know where that is, but for those who don't, everybody knows where Yellowstone is. We're the park just south of Yellowstone.
Yeah.
So lots of animals, big scenery, big mountains. It's a really, really cool place. And my wife and I have really been going out there, I would say, since the early 90s. And it was almost every year. If we didn't have a specific idea for a vacation, it's like, well, let's go back to Grand Teton. We had the opportunity about 8 years ago now to actually live in the park in late spring, early summer for about a month.
Wow.
And believe it or not, it's a pretty new park. So there's still a few private in-holdings, and a couple of those are for rent. And we were able to basically rent a small cabin right in the middle of the park for a month. And I would have to say it was a life-changing experience. It was just, it's one thing to visit for a week or two, and that's super, super cool. But to actually live there and get to know people and all this sort of thing was just amazing. So, we were at that point in our latter 50s, and we said, this would be really cool as a next phase of life. So we looked around and, how do you do this? So you talk to a lot of people, of course, who are doing this, and you realize that you either need to live in the area or you need to bring your own housing. We looked for about 3 hours in Jackson, Wyoming, at the real estate prices. And we realized, well, that wasn't going to happen. And this is back when it's like half of what it is now. Yeah. So once again, I probably should have figured out a way, but I didn't. And the other way, it's like, well, geez, what's this RV thing? We hadn't camped in 30 years. We'd never done an RV. My idea of a big tow vehicle was a Subaru Outback at the time. So, we start learning about this stuff, and we talk to people who are, do this. And it's like, well, this is okay. Well, maybe we could do that, because the goal again was, how can you live in the park? So we realized, again, if you bring your own housing, and we started looking at, what brands hold their value and things. It's like, there's these Airstream things. So we looked even more at those, and we went to Hershey and probably like so many of your listeners when they're starting out, we went through maybe not hundreds, but certainly dozens and dozens, you name it. A, C, Super C, travel trailers, you name it.
Right.
And we kept coming back to Airstreams. And we just love the fit and the finish. We love the windows. We love the open air feel. So it's like, these are pretty cool. And then we went out, I guess by 2018, I think it was. We still didn't own an Airstream, but we ended up at Palooza, which is one of the rallies, right at the factory or the mothership.
Mm-hmm. It's a fun one too.
Yeah, we went
one
there.
Of the things we found was not only are the trailers really cool, but the community is even cooler. We were talking to people, so we didn't have a trailer. And we're just talking to people we'd never met before. And within 5 minutes, these folks who are really total strangers to us are just throwing us their keys to their trailer, and they're living in it full time or part time. And they say, yeah, poke around, do whatever you want. Just don't let the cat out. And it's like, it's your house.
Yeah. So you went to you went to Palooza without being an Airstream owner at the time.
That is correct.
Wow,
yeah.
That's awesome. That's really commitment and passion.
Yeah. So long story short is we ended up buying a used Classic. So we have a 2017 Classic that was about a year old when we got it there. And we are using that. We were able to, through, just sort of persistence, because it's the National Park Service, God bless them, they're government, right? So there's a certain amount of persistence and bureaucracy involved, but we were able to get into the volunteer program in Grand Teton. And,
wow.
And just for your listeners, if you're thinking about it, doesn't have to be Grand Teton, of course, but really most of the parks run what they call a VIP program, a volunteer in park program. And you can look that up on the NPS website. And if you have a specific park that you're interested in, and you may just want to do this in general, there's almost always a ranger who's, one of his or her day jobs is to be the volunteer coordinator. And you can talk to them and find out, what the specifics are, because each park is different. What duties they have available for volunteers, how would you apply, what are the hours, what are the months, all that sort of thing. We have just found it to be a tremendously rewarding experience volunteering.
So. It is.
Have you were you volunteering before you got the Airstream, or did you start that after you got the Airstream and were able to go out there and stay for an extended period of time?
So we had the Airstream first, and the Airstream, very frankly, was a tool to let us do this bigger goal of volunteering in the park. So we came home with our Airstream at the end of the season of 2018, really didn't do very much with it at all in that year. In 2019, we did the obligatory big trip around the country like everybody does when you first get one of these. And we went from knowing nothing to at least knowing some things at the end of 10,000 miles in 5 months or whatever it was. And then the following year, 2020, is when we went out to Grand Teton. And 2020 is, maybe some people remember, was a little bit of an unusual year.
Yeah.
And it was even better to bring your own housing because they sure weren't sharing anyone else's housing at that point. Yeah. So one of the things we found was we were able to go from Pennsylvania to Wyoming, and again, this was, late spring of 2020, without really interacting with a single other person. Mm-hmm. I've got a card that I can use at truck stops for diesel. We were self-contained for food and water and all that sort of thing. It's not necessarily that you don't want to talk to any people, but we realized this was really a very safe way, even in those extraordinary circumstances, to move around the country. Yeah. So we started volunteering, and it's most years it's been almost 6 months. We start in April and end in October, and 2020 through 2023 we did that. We weren't able to last year in 2024. But yes, it's just been a tremendous experience, and it is one that we really could not have had without the Airstream.
Yeah, mm-hmm. And that's kind of what when you just mentioned that the Airstream is the tool to allow you to have that bigger life goal, that falls in line perfectly with our podcast mission, which is to learn stories like this about how adding an Airstream to your life has enhanced it. And Gina and I absolutely love Grand Teton National Park and the greater, Jackson Hole area. Mm-hmm. And so we're right there with you about how having an aspiration to spend a season out there is a life goal because it's such a beautiful, unique place. So,
well, it changed our perspective of life and RVing for sure.
It really did.
Yeah, and that was in 2017 for us. So we're right there with you on that, Dave.
That's awesome. So 2017 Classic, and you bought it new or pre-owned again? What'd you
pre-owned?
Pre-owned? It was used. Yeah, it was. I guess a year and a half, something like that.
Yeah. Is it a 30-foot Classic?
Yeah, it's a 30-foot Classic. It was the first year that Airstream had the Aldi heating system in it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I've certainly, on the social media and things, I see different comments, but I can tell you personally, we have loved ours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It is silent. It's like having a, silent radiator in your house. It's even heat. It's very, very quiet. You really have to strain to even hear if there's a very small pump running. It seems pretty efficient. It's that pump uses very little power if you're boondocking. The propane use does not seem to be excessive at all. So,
yeah.
And we've camped down into temperatures, 10, 11 degrees Fahrenheit. And the Aldi has done just fine.
Well, that's wonderful.
And that's the thing, that one of the funny anecdotes to our story about Grand Tetons and Jackson Hole is that in 2017, we were out there during the summer. We actually were fortunate enough to experience the solar eclipse of 2017 while we were in Grand Teton National Park. And it's August, and this was our first trip in the Airstream, big major trip in the Airstream. And before we left, Gina was packing like cold weather clothes, and I'm thinking, Gina, why are you doing that? It's summertime, and from East Coasters, at 700-foot elevation in North Carolina, where we were from,
it was 100 degrees.
I could not compute the nighttime lows in the summertime being what they would be in Jackson Hole.
You were thankful though, weren't you?
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, you're even in spring and summer camping time. If you're spending the summers out there, you need to run that heat. And
yeah. The heat is not every day, but it's on quite a few mornings at least, whether it's electric or propane or something, but you're probably running the heat for at least a couple hours in the morning.
Yeah, just to knock that chill off, right?
We have, the reason I ask you if you had a 30-foot classic is, obviously there's a lot of differences in the trim and the visual aesthetic and some components, but we have a 30-foot Airstream as well, and I think our floor plans for the most part are fairly similar, where you have your bedroom in the back and your shower and bathroom across the hall and kitchen on the door side and things like that. Our floor plans are similar, but we've got a 30-foot Flying Cloud, and we considered a classic because Gina liked the fancy door handle and the doorbell.
I will admit that the doorbell is cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's pretty cool. Well, Dave, have you done any kind of modifications to the Airstream since you've purchased it?
Well, we did, and actually, the reason we got this particular Airstream used, and it was not the color scheme that my wife wanted, and several other things, but the gentleman who owned it before, for reasons really known only unto him, had probably put $20,000 worth of upgrades into this. And then he decided he wanted something else.
Yeah. Wow.
So this is, again, now, this isn't as uncommon nowadays, but back, 2018, we were able to buy this with 600 or 700 watts of solar on the roof, but 1,000 amp hours of lithium batteries under the bed.
Oh, man.
3,000 watt inverter. We actually have hydraulic jacks that we can use to level ourselves from side to side. So not the stabilizers, but actual jacks, almost like a fifth wheel.
Right.
And there were just a number of other things that this gentleman put in. So, I'm thankful he did that. But then he decided, no, I don't want this after all. And
good for you.
Went on to something else, I understand.
Yeah, that was lucky for you.
We kind of swooped in and picked this up.
Yeah. So, I was just going to say the all of those upgrades, and especially the solar. I mean, you being out in Grand Tetons, you're as a volunteer, you are able to be on a full hookup site as a volunteer, I guess, right? You're not having to dry camp the whole summer you're out there.
And that is correct. Yeah. we are for the employees, and there's a couple employee loops in the park. They are full hookups, which is nice. But when we go across country, or when we're doing other things, we're basically power independent. We're limited by water. But not only are we power independent, one of the other things that I subsequently added was a 50 amp DC to DC charger off the truck. We've got an F-250 diesel, and so we can charge those batteries, whether it's cloudy or sunny or whatever. I can come into a campground at 95 to 100%, and if we were careful, we could probably, make that last way over a week. But we kind of look at this as not so much, hardcore camping in which, we're going to be one with the dirt and the rocks on the floor. We did that in our 20s and got that T-shirt. Don't need to do it again. Mm-hmm. But we, kind of live in the Airstream as to some degree as we would live at home. So we can use the computers. If my wife wants to watch a movie, she can watch a movie. If it's too hot, we'll cool it down. If it's too warm, we'll heat it up. We like that. So it's really, it's an extension. It's kind of, we don't have a sticks and bricks second home, but we really look at that classic. That is our second home. It just happens to have wheels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you've been able to let that second home be in Jackson, Wyoming for the past few summers. That's
places.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we get to live in, some of the nicest parts, most beautiful parts of the U.S. for months at a time, and just work with incredible people while we're there.
Yeah.
That's great.
Are you still doing a lot of traveling?
So things are changing right now. Mm-hmm. So as you mentioned at the beginning, we started a business. I started it with a longtime shipmate and a friend of mine of 30 years, gentleman Van Gurley, who is the chief executive officer of a defense company called Metron. So we formed this partnership about a year ago. And as we are developing RV weather and rolling out products, my duties, if you will, are more and more focused onto making this into a successful business. So we were able to, but this just leads to another set of opportunities. So we actually were able to attend the Airstream rally in Sedalia last year in, I guess it was October.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've had Rich Collins on your podcast or not, but Rich runs his own YouTube channel there, Love Sub, I believe it is. But he is the chair of the exhibits, basically, for the Airstream rally. And he and his wife have done that for a number of years. So when we showed up in October, we really just thought we were just going to be there. And if we could talk to some people, that was nice. We ran into Rich, and he basically said, "Do you want a booth?" And it's like, sure. So we went from zero to having a booth in about 18 hours.
Wow. Yeah.
And thank goodness there was a Walmart and a Staples within about a mile of the fairgrounds where we were, where the rally was being held. So we got to do that. And actually awesome. We're recording this here in early January. My wife and I, in a few days, are all set to go from Pennsylvania down to Tampa for the Tampa RV Super Show. And we're going to be exhibiting RV weather there. So,
well, and it's just another example of how the Airstream is providing a benefit to your life and giving you the ability to go to these places for promoting RV weather and just not having to deal with flights and hotels and other types of typical business travel. You're able to do it with your Airstream in tow. And there was a point to your point earlier when you were talking about being able to travel the country in 2020 without, having to interact. Gina and I, we've been full-time RVers since almost 7 years now. And we have become accustomed to having our Airstream behind us all the time. So when we pull in for fuel and things like that, we have our own bathroom. We have a place to go and grab a little snack and things like that without having to go into the truck stops or go into the gas stations and things like that. And it's a very weird feeling when you have to make some kind of longer distance driving trip without the Airstream behind you.
Yes, that's a difficult one.
And
it is. And it's also weird to be driving 70 miles an hour.
Yes.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, all of that and above.
All of that.
Yeah.
And what we do whenever we see an Airstreamer on the road, we flash our lights. Well, we've gone down the highway and we're flashing our lights and waving, and they're looking at us like we're crazy because we don't have an Airstream behind us.
Yeah, we think we
forget.
think it's always back there, but sometimes it's not.
You and your wife are headed to Tampa, Florida within this next week for the RV show. And when I think of people in Pennsylvania right now, I think of cold, I think of snow, I think driving on the roads and, any hazardous weather that they might run into heading south. And it sounds like you have an inside track to knowing what that weather is. So can you share a little bit about that with us?
I was going to say yeah, as part of bringing my Airstream to these various conventions, I get to eat my own cooking, if you will.
Yes.
In the sense that I use my own tools to route me. So looking at the weather impacts and then really coming up with a route. And I'm out there on Interstate 80 or Interstate 25 or I-40, just like everybody else. And it's like this, so I get firsthand experience as to whether this is all working here. But you're exactly right, Gina. What we provide is really we take the weather impacts that are going to affect RVers. So, I mean, there's obviously, I don't know, tens of thousands of weather apps out there, right? And we all have them. I've got a bunch on my phone. I'll bet everybody does. Most of which are free, and for a basic forecast, it's absolutely fine. They're good enough. What we have done is we have taken the 7 kinds of weather that affect RVers. So you can think of rain, snow, ice, high winds, extreme temperatures. And by that, I'm talking about, temperatures either well below 0 or well above 100. I forget if I mentioned severe thunderstorms and visibility, like we have fog and blowing dust and things like that.
Yes.
And we color code them. Basically, we'll take that and we'll put it into a set of impacts from 1 to 5, where 1 is like, it's probably not really great, but most RVers are going to be okay. Although, if circumstances permitted, it's like we prefer not to be in level 1, all the way to level 5, where really nobody wants to be. And oh, by the way, the freeway is probably going to be shut down by that point anyways. So we'll take those. And what I do is I actually use a system from the National Weather Service that they in turn have developed. And it came from Superstorm Sandy, for those who remember that storm, supplemental money, in which I shouldn't say we anymore. The National Weather Service is taking really up to 171 different models and their variations and putting them all together. So we basically, those that are performing the best or have performed the best get weighted more, as you would expect. But we're looking at everything. And although it says national blend of models, it's honestly an international blend of models. We're taking the European data, British data, Canadian data. I think there's even some Australian data in there, US Navy data, as well as, of course, National Weather Service data. It all gets put in there. What a lot of people don't realize when they look at, let's say, an app like Windy, really nice graphics, pretty graphics, and it's almost mesmerizing how you can watch those. And people tell me, wow, that was really good. What they may or may not realize is it's the exact same data, and it's just one model. They probably don't even know which model it is. So rather than trying to guess which model you want to look at, because it's kind of a loser's game. You can, you may be right once in a while, but usually there's always going to be something better. This is sort of the weather equivalent of index investing. Use them all, right? Put them all together. Use them all. This is, if Vanguard ran weather modeling, this is what they would do.
Right.
And that's what I take as the underlying part. It's updated every hour, on the hour, 24/7, 365. And I run this out through 8 days. And I've had some people say, well, I want to know like what it's going to be at 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And I can go to, XYZ website and see something. And it's like, yeah, you absolutely can. I mean, I can show you stuff out to 6 months, but I wouldn't trust anything. What I have found is that from 8 days in towards the future, if I'm giving you a route recommendation, a trip route recommendation, it's really pretty stable. We're not going to be flip-flopping back and forth. It doesn't really do the customer or anyone any good if I say, go on I-80 this afternoon. And then 5 hours later, it's like, no, I mean I-70. And it's like, no, I mean I-90.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
you'd be zigzagging.
if you started to get recommendations like that, my guess is the first thing you would do is cancel your subscription. And the second thing you do is delete it all.
So help me understand. Yeah. Help me understand something, because I think I understand it, but I want to clarify it because I'm a little slow sometimes. But so you're telling me that RVweather.com has the ability for me as an Airstreamer to tell you where I want to go, even if it's a multi-day, long, extended trip, and it will take that information of where I want to go. It'll base the route recommendation around the weather impacts, and then make sure that I know that if I've got a 3 or 4 day drive ahead of me, what I might be faced with on day 3 somewhere.
You've got it, Chris.
Wow.
That's absolutely right. What we
That's
do,
impressive.
That's amazing.
We start with the weather first. So, if you go to any, and I use these too. I mean, this is really how most of the world works. I want to go from, and I'll just take the East Coast out to, let's say, Yellowstone. If I put that in, if I put it into Google, it's going to tell me, take Route 80, right? Take Route 80 across and then go north in Wyoming. And that's correct. If I put it into an RV trip planner, it may say, well, do you want to go to these other places? And it routes you. But none of those look at the weather, right?
Right.
So what we do is we're looking at weather, and again, out to 8 days. And then you tell me where you want to go. I will get you there. And I will get you there driving through weather no worse than what you asked for. And you could say, look, I don't want to deal with weather at all. They call that level 0. And you can do that. Or maybe you have a schoolie, right? I've routed some people with, big, heavy schoolies, and they're like, well, keep me out of hurricanes and tornadoes, but everything else I'm okay with. It's like, hey, roger that,
Yeah.
And, I've had a couple of folks, it's like, and they're just screaming winds across the high plains, and they went, and I was, oh my God, what's going to happen here?
Yeah.
And, I talked to them in the evening, and it's like, well, there were some semi trucks that had blown off their side on the road, and we felt a little bit of wind, but it wasn't that bad. It's like,
wow.
Okay, but most of us aren't going to do that. At least I hope. So yeah, you put in your weather preference. You put in like how many hours you like to drive. You put in your towing speed. What time do you like to stop? You can put in up to 3 dozen waypoints. So let's say, yes, I'm going from Pennsylvania to Yellowstone, but I want to go visit my, my children in Traverse City. And I really want to go and see a baseball game in Minneapolis. And I've absolutely got to go and see the Badlands in South Dakota. And my granddaughter really wants me to pick up a tchotchke from Wall Drug, because you can't go to the Badlands without Wall Drug, right?
Right.
So whatever you want, you can put in as many waypoints as you want. You can put in how many nights you want to stay at each one of those places. And then we're going to take that. So out to 8 days, we look at weather. And then what you would see is after 8 days is you'll get a dashed line. And that dashed line, frankly, is the Google answer. But then as you update this, and all you have to do once you've created your route is you can come in, let's say you've pulled into your campsite, you've had dinner. What you do is, well, one, exactly where you're starting in the morning because you're there. Just make sure that's the starting point now. Make sure tomorrow morning is your starting time, and then just hit update. Yeah. And boom, in about a minute or so, you'll have your route, and you can just keep doing that. You can actually update it, honestly, as many times as you want. As I said, the data updates every hour. But I tell people update it once a day, twice a day, if you really want to. If you want to do it in the morning, you certainly can do that again. But that's how it works.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and that will keep you out of the bad weather. Sometimes I get asked, by people, it's like, well, I kind of know where I'm going. I planned out my trip. Let's say I used, whether it was RV Trip Wizard or Adventure Genie or Road Trippers or, one of those. I planned out my trip months ago. This is our big trip, and we're really excited. Very cool. So you just put in as waypoints all those places you know you're going to stop. So there's now probably a point every day or every 2 days. So my system is pretty constrained where it's going to take you, right? But when you start getting within that 8-day window, if you see bad weather, my system's probably, since it's so constrained, is just going to say, hey, hold up for a weather delay. But you will see, hey, in 4 days or 5 days, we've got a real weather issue. And 4 or 5 days in advance, not too many other people are thinking about that. So if you need to change your plans, you're probably at the front of the queue. And most places, of course, every campground and business is a little different, but most places, at least I've found, I think maybe, I don't know what your experience has been. If you need to change your reservations 4 or 5 days in advance, you can do that and get your money back, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not trying to do it the day of and tell them, well, the weather got bad or something. And I know certainly for some services like Harvest Host, they really frown on you canceling right the day of. You get put on the bad boy list, and none of us want to be on the bad boy list.
That's right.
So having that heads up, if you will, 3, 4, 5, 6 days in advance lets you figure out your options. Maybe I go faster because I really, really, really want to be there and I'm going to beat the weather. Or maybe I just need to find another really cool thing to do and not get caught or get trapped.
Yeah.
What I think is really cool about it all is that, as RVers, we watch the weather constantly. Even if we're going to be sitting still for a little while, we're still watching the weather. And I think that may be just because we have an Airstream, it's aluminum, and hail can really do a lot of damage to an Airstream. So we love to travel all over, and we don't know if a rain shower could have hail in it or not without watching the weather. So we are very, very particular about our weather. And I think what you're offering people is, even if they are sitting still, they can still get on and watch their weather as well in the location or around them. But I'm wondering too, does it alert people? Like if there's a sudden, tornado or wind or hail or something like that pop up, does it warn or at least give the conditions are favorable to? How does that work?
So, we're really a planner, a trip planner. What we do show in our thunderstorms is the thunderstorms are really, very strong and severe thunderstorms. So if there's a chance of hail, tornadoes, really damaging winds, you are going to see, if you go to our weather impacts graphic and just click on the thunderstorms only, so only show impacts from those. If you start seeing sort of those orange and red colors coming through where you are, even if you're just camping, then you know that, you need to pay attention.
Right. Well, that's good.
I also have on the graphics that are updated continually in RV weather. And these are actually free. These are available to anybody, that will show you where the warnings are, where the National Weather Service severe thunderstorm and tornado warnings are for any minute. It will show you where the Weather Service is thinking about putting out a warning. So it may give you 2 or 3 hours of heads up notice. That's available, and that's right up at the top of my graphics page. I also show specifically for hail, because hail is such a big deal for, RVs in general, but especially for us Airstreamers, right? Hail is not our friend.
No.
So I have a day 1 and day 2 hail forecast specifically. And I even have a 48-hour hourly animation that will show you hail size.
Wow.
So if you're camping, you can look at those and you can, and it doesn't, you don't need a degree in meteorology. This you could do this in like less than 2 minutes, probably a minute or so. You could just take a quick look at that animation. You could take a quick look at the couple graphics and say, oh, okay, we're good. I don't need to worry about this. Or, hey, this afternoon, this evening, we really got something. And then you got to decide what you want to do, right? Is there, is this, do you just make sure your insurance is updated, or hopefully there may be a better plan? Can you, get somewhat undercover? Some people will even leave, right?
That's
they'll
what we do. We leave. Yeah. I mean, we have wills for a reason. We don't have to sit still and go through that. Yeah.
And of course, it always depends on the circumstances, right? Everybody's circumstances are a little bit different. Some people, yes, they can absolutely leave. Some people, they've just got life things going on that they need to be there. And of course, I'm not in the business of telling anybody what they should or should not do, but I'm trying to give them the information so they don't be surprised. They aren't getting surprised, and they can make informed decisions based on all their circumstances of what's going to be best for them.
Yeah.
I think it sounds like we would have our own personal weatherman in our pocket.
Absolutely.
Well, when we designed the routing, I've actually done the routing on a pro bono basis, mostly Airstreams, actually, since that's the community I've come out of. But I probably routed 300 or 400 different RV trips, and I did it by hand. And this is somewhat similar to how we, again, going back to the beginning of the podcast here, how we keep US Navy ships in bad weather apart from each other. And we would do this. And what we've tried to do with the technology here is to really scale that, because I can only do just so many of those, manual routings by myself per day. And eventually my wife reminds me that I'm supposed to be retired and like, what are you doing? So we wanted something that could scale, but could basically replicate having that. And Gina, you actually bring up a great point that we've got a help button right on the route. It says contact us, and that will send an email, and I'll see that. Or if it's not me, I'll have one of my team members see it. So, a lot of weather apps, maybe it's written by some IT guy who's like in Czechoslovakia or something like that, which is all good. Nothing wrong with that. But he's probably not going to be able to help you with a weather question, right?
Yeah, right.
So if you've got a question like, I don't understand the route, or what are these impacts, or, hey, just help me understand something here, we'll get back to you. So like, it won't be an AI bot. It won't be a chat bot. There's no voicemail hell. You'll get a real answer from a real human who's a meteorologist and understands RVing.
Wow. That awesome. Is amazing. Yeah, I like that.
And I mean, to sum up, or in my mind, what you've just talked about is, and we've been on both sides of this example, but whether you are making a epic cross-country trip over the course of several weeks to a month, and each, leg of that trip is multi-days crossing different terrains and potential weather zones, your website will give that type of RV traveler a lot of information to make good decisions. But on the flip side, somebody that they've got their 1 week of vacation in the summer and they're going down to the beach, or they're going down to some favorite campground, and they're going to sit still that entire time frame, they still have the ability to look out multiple days and make decisions about what they plan to do from an RVing perspective while sitting still at that campground all week long. We all have to be concerned for our awnings and our camp chairs and our pop-up screen shelters and, just everything, even if it's whether you're going to have friends over for a barbecue one afternoon or not. And it's all geared around weather impacts, which I think is cool, because I'll tell you that I'm complacent in looking at some of the weather apps where I just scroll over the multi-day forecast, and all they're really giving me is highs and lows and a percentage of precipitation, and that's it.
And maybe a little bit of rain, but not enough to make a judgment call.
And then I have to like take that visual of seeing a percentage of precipitation, and then hopefully dive in better on that day and see if it's going to give me some details about what they're forecasting. And it's not, it wouldn't be as either intuitive or thorough of information as it sounds like RV Weather is going to give And I mean, that's great because, you know, somebody that's not an RVer, obviously they're going to be affected by the weather just like an RVer is, but all of these other little aspects of being out there in the elements, RVers are always weather aware about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's right, Chris. I mean, and we've really tuned these impacts, and it's based, you know, not only on I guess I've towed about 40,000 miles, give or take, but also on routing these hundreds of other RVers. And as I said, I would say the majority are Airstreamers. That's really what helped me develop the scales. So we're super sensitive to snow. I have yet to meet anybody who enjoys towing in snow. I meet RVers who like skiing, but they don't want to tow in the snow.
No way.
You know, winds, of course, are a much, much bigger deal for all of us than if you're just driving your Toyota Corolla around. Severe thunderstorms are a big deal for just about everybody, but even rain. I mean, you know, just sort of so-called garden variety rain is usually will show up as level 1. I mean, you get on the freeways and, you know, all that road spray and stuff, it's, you know, it takes a lot more concentration, right? We all know that. Snow and ice. I mean, you can see as we're talking here, we have a big storm developing in the center of the country heading out to the mid-Atlantic. And if you take a look at the weather impacts right now on my graphics, you'll see that ice shows up as like a bright red because you just, you know, towing. I mean, even driving in a
don't do it. Just don't even do it.
Right? don't be towing.
Just stay home. Yes,
because you're going to be in the ditch, and then it's just not good.
Ice is so dangerous.
Yeah. So all of that, and the other thing, I guess I'd mention, Rich. You know, even if you're just doing this 3 times a year, like right now, I'm working with a gentleman who's a snowbird out of Massachusetts, and he's trying to get down to Florida. And he was like, well, you know, I'm interested in this stuff, but I only use it a couple times a year. And it's like, well, that's cool. I mean, my guess is a number of us probably have Starlink or maybe YouTube TV or things like that. And really pattern off of those business models. On my monthly subscription, you can actually pause it. So you can just turn it off and you will not be charged again until you turn it back on. So let's say you're a snowbird and you go down in late December, early January, run it for a month, turn it off. And then, you know, when it's time to come home in March or April, turn it on for a month and turn it off if that's what you'd like to do.
That's a nice feature.
That is really cool.
So, it is.
Yeah, we do that. You know, of course, while full timing is super cool, or, you know, part time most of the time, which is sometimes what I think we do. There's a lot of folks who, you know, it just life is such that that's not how they're using their RV. It's more episodic, and I want to be able to support those people without like jamming them into an annual subscription or something like that. As far as what's free, we've got a lot of stuff for free, and by free, I mean, it's free. There's no sign up. There's no free but. It's like just go to RVWeather.com. And if you go to, I'm going to call it up to make sure I don't mess this up here. Go to weather awareness, and it even says free. You can click on that tab and you can read latest weather forecasts. So one of the things we do, and this is actually really where RV Weather started almost 3 years ago when it was frankly a hobby for me, is I write a national forecast every morning. It goes out between about 7:30 and about between 7 and 8 o'clock Eastern time. I give 3 big bullet highlights, and then I break it down. If you click on it, you will see really which roads are impacted, and I list them by time zone. So Pacific, Mountain, Central, Eastern. Every day it's the same format. And I'll put where there's watches, warnings, and advisories, but I'll list the interstates and the primary U.S. highways that are impacted. So, you know, for anybody who's traveling, it's kind of written from a traveler's perspective. Under the weather awareness for free, we have essential and deep dive graphics. And again, those are free. That's where you can find the hourly hail forecast. You can find outlooks out to 2 weeks. You can look at the hourly out to 48 hours or out to 2 days, you can look at an hourly animation of future rainfall and thunderstorms, wind.
It sounds like by looking at all this too, Dave, that it gives the user an opportunity to just kind of see what the website's all about before deciding if they want to become a member.
Yeah, you can see this, and you will see, like on the daily forecast, I always do a screenshot of this afternoon's and tomorrow afternoon's integrated weather impacts. The product we call it WILMA. Weather impacts likely to make an appeance.
I wondered what that stood for.
Yes, and I like WILMA. WILMA's been good to us, but so that graphic is in every one. I post this also. There's a free Facebook page I run, RV Weather, and I post that graphic. You'll see that every day up on that Facebook page as well.
I'm wondering when you sleep, Dave.
Yeah, the alarm still goes off pretty early each morning.
Wow, I think. Did I interrupt you, Chris? Were you going to say something?
No. I was. One of my questions to him was going to be, who's WILMA?
Oh yeah, and he dove in there and took that away from you, didn't he?
We had another acronym, but it was like some boring, almost sounded like Department of Defense kind of acronym. Yeah. It's like, we need to make this more fun.
No,
so we're going to call this WILMA.
I think it's awesome. It's like your grandmother Wilma or something telling you to be careful outside. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So
yeah, if you look at the URL, you'll actually see it's Wilma in there.
I'm sitting here and I'm thinking back about, the introduction and what you've gone and done and achieved and experienced in your life. And it's phenomenal, and thank you for your service and everything that you've done there. But in listening to that, I shouldn't say but I am. In listening to, the beginnings of you in the Navy and directing all of the ships and keeping them out of harm's way and all this. Now with RV weather, it sounds like you are doing the same thing with RVs, directing them, trying to keep them out of, danger and keep them safe. So I'm sitting here listening to this and thinking all this, and I'm like, okay, Dave, which one is harder to do? Navigate ships or navigate RVers? Can you answer that?
That's a really interesting question. I guess, for the RVers, everybody's responsible, right? For your own rig. Ultimately, you're responsible.
Right.
So I've learned, as you mature over the years, right? It's the old serenity prayer, right? There are things you can control and things you can't control.
Yes.
So I can provide information, but, ultimately, it's up to all of us as RV owners and drivers to make that ultimate decision, right? Do we go down this road? Do we take that Forest Service road? Do we, stop at this rest area, or it just doesn't feel quite right, and I'm gonna move on down the road? We all make those decisions every day we're on the road. So I'm trying to provide that information so that people can make, better travel decisions so that they're not getting surprised. But ultimately, none of us know all the circumstances of anybody else's life. And we're not, and I'm not trying to be deep philosophical here or anything, but, some people will absolutely make the decision I would have made and others don't. And that's fine. Whereas the Navy ships sometimes, it's like you see what's coming and it's like, oh man, you really need to do this. And sometimes you can make them do that and sometimes you can't. Yeah. I would say, I'm not sure that there's a difference or so other than maybe I've changed and I've just realized that, I feel good if I can provide information that's understandable, and that whoever I'm talking to, understands what I'm saying and they understand the risks and the, and the costs. and of moving, because right, if you're deviating, there's some degree of cost. You're on the road more, it's another night, it's something, or an opportunity cost. You're not going to go see what you thought you were going to go and see. And if I can help people sort of balance those, and then they come to their decision, I feel pretty good.
Yeah,
I think that's a great answer. And I tell you, you're very passionate. I can just feel it coming through the mic here. The passion that you have in weather forecasting in general, but also in helping others, get to where they're going safely. And Chris and I really do appreciate that for ourselves. And I think we can say that to our listeners, for our listeners too.
Absolutely. And to your point that RVWeather.com is fairly new. I definitely hear where you're coming from with that, but for everybody that goes to that website and sees it and sees what a beautiful product you've built, and also know that you're an experienced Airstreamer and your experience in meteorology and just weather impacts and everything associated with that. You're not new in that field. And so the information that they're going to get is coming from an RVer's perspective with the reputation and experience of a veteran meteorologist and beyond. So we're so excited to learn about that, and we hope that our listeners got a lot out of it. That's I'm very impressed and so happy to have had you share that with us.
Yeah, it's been an honor, Dave, to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Chris and Gina. I mean, this has really been a lot of fun this morning. I hope it has been for you too. And I really appreciate the opportunity just to talk about some of these and, share our Airstream stories and be with you on the podcast. This has been great.
Oh, you're welcome. I before we wrap up, I want to just ask one fun little tidbit. So, as much as we love Grand Tetons, and given what you said you do out there, give us one little cool, amazing story of your volunteering out there and what you've experienced with regard to wildlife. I mean, I'm putting you on the spot here with that, but I'm so intrigued. I can only imagine some of the experiences you've had.
Oh, that's a great one, Chris. I like it.
Yeah. So we have worked actually quite a number of positions, and it is sort of funny that, when we started having these visions of volunteering, we're thinking, oh, this will be great. We'll be out in nature. It's going to be wonderful. You know what the first job was that we did and that they offered us?
What was that?
Running Lost and Found.
Oh, no way.
In a windowless office.
You got to earn your dues.
That's your first job. So what did we say? We said, yes, we would love to do that, because, it's just like any other, when I advise my students from Penn State in their first job. If that's the company you want to work for, you say yes. And then you get to meet everybody, and then you get to figure out, what you want to do.
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of jobs there. I would say some of the most fun things that we get to do is when families with children come, and especially if they're coming, if they're not local, they're maybe coming from the east or the south or California, it doesn't matter, and they really just haven't had the opportunity to see wildlife out in the wild apart from a zoo. And we have had multiple opportunities in which, I can ask a 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old boy or girl, it's like, have you ever seen a moose before? Have you ever seen a bear before? And they shake their head from side to side, and you bring them over to a spotting scope or give them your pair of binoculars or whatever. It's like, look here, and you just watch their face, and you have made their summer.
Yeah.
You have made their summer. That is something they're going to remember for years and years on end. The first time they get to see, a big animal out in the wild, no bars, no nothing. Those are really, really fun experiences.
Yeah. And rewarding too, I could imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever have you ever experienced, people trying to walk up to wildlife?
Well, let's see. There are nearly 4 million visitors every year. 3 to 4 million visitors every year. So, you just sort of do the bell curve, right? And how many standard deviations do you have to go out? So even if you go out 5 or 6 standard deviations, there are a few people who, might think that these animals are tame because they're in a park, or there's no possible way anybody could get hurt because you're in a park, right? And we have to educate those visitors that these are actually wild animals, and the park does have regulations, of course, on for wolves and bears you need to be at least 100 yards away, and for all other wildlife you need to be at least 25 yards away and not impeding or disturbing or altering those animals' behaviors. Yeah. So there certainly is some components of education that we get to do to really keep the visitors safe and keep the wildlife safe at the same time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, I
it has to be a challenging job.
Yeah. Well,
but they're so cute and they're so furry. I just want to pet it. I can hear it now.
Yep. Stay 100 yards from the bears and everyone will be happy.
Yes.
Well, I can say, I think I'm speaking for Gina when I say this, that we both are extremely envious of your experiences out there and what you've done, and just knowing your, having the Airstream, knowing that you've got a comfortable place to go home at the end of a busy but fun day, and enjoying an entire season out in that beautiful landscape. We're envious, to say the least. So that's, I'm sure, been amazing for you, and wish you the best for RVWeather.com. Mm-hmm. And we absolutely can't wait to see you down the road as soon as we can in person. And again, thank you so very much, Dave, for coming on our podcast.
Yes, thank you, Dave. We appreciate
you. Thanks, Chris and Gina. This has been great. This has been a ton of fun.
And you have a safe trip down to Florida, and have fun with that. That'll be a lot warmer than where you are right now.
Yes, it will. Thanks so much.
Enjoy. Thank you so much. We'll see you down the road.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay, thanks. Safe travels.
Amazing conversation, Gina.
Absolutely. It seems like we just keep getting more and more Airstreamers coming up with these great stories.
This guy is no exception. He's got an amazing history, and how he's transitioning that into his Airstream life and sharing it with people. It's amazing. So it's awesome.
Sure is. We appreciate it too, don't we?
Yep. Listener, we hope you got a lot out of this episode, and thank you for being along the ride with us. Check out RVWeather.com, follow our podcast. You'll be notified of new episodes, and we thank you very much for hanging out with us.
Yes, we do. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you down the road.